So you retired from the Navy as a commander, right?
That's correct.
And you were the XO of Dewey.
That's my last sea tour. Correct.
Your last sea tour. So what's something you learned about leadership, naval leadership, while you were in?
Well, one thing is how much trust is important. So the amount of trust both up and down the chain of command that everyone is going to do what is required of them, the longer I stayed in, the more important I saw that. And then the other thing is, how much in that environment, as you have more responsibility, people watch what you do because they want to learn. They want to see, what's required for them to move up. So those two things together to make sure that you keep the trust both up and down the chain of command, and also to understand that people are always watching because they want to learn, and so they're seeing what you're doing. What examples do you provide? Do you provide the positive examples? Do you provide examples of what not to do? How important it is to understand that you're always people are trying to advance, and they're looking for role models, and you want to make sure that you provide the right role model.
So you become a role model either way, either a good one or a bad one, right?
Oh yes, it's there's the saying that you learn from good leaders and bad leaders. You learn what to do and what not to do. But that was the thing that in that close quarters, in that tight environment, you go on deployment, and whoever you are, that definitely comes out. You can't hide it. So part of being leaders, embracing what you're good at, knowing what you're not good at, and you have to definitely be yourself. But being yourself also means that you're accountable, and you know what you need to do, and you inspire that trust, and you also show the respect for those that have earned it.
Hey, I'm Chief Xander Gamble. Welcome to this week's episode of Pass the Word. Today we've got the Associate Dean of Naval Studies. He's in charge of the entire Naval Studies Certificate Program, Mr. Russ Evans. And today we're going to talk about the first of 5 courses, right? NAV 101, Naval Ethics and Leadership. So let's start off with why. Why did we choose this course as one of the 5 courses for the program?
So, Chief, I appreciate the question. One of the things that we tried to do is, where to start. If we're going to take a look at what are the courses or the things that we thought students should study, what is the one place that we always thought we should start, and that's with ourselves. So one of the things that I really enjoy about the courses is with everyone, all the students being either Navy, Marine, or Coast Guard, they have an understanding what that environment is and what it's like to be in those circumstances and make those calls. So we thought, start with ourselves. Take a look at what we can learn from each other as far as what are some ways to have sort of a broad view of, not necessarily here's a list of things to do, here's a list of things to don't do, but what is a system that we can look at so we can evaluate each situation, not knowing all the situations that we could be in, and have a way to go through and say, this is probably the best course of action for tough circumstances that you may not have been prepared for because it's the first time that's happened, at least to you. So that's why we wanted to start with an ethics course, and I think the importance is sort of apparent to everyone, but we wanted to start sort of small and personal, and then with the courses work to bigger and bigger topics.
So like starting with brilliant on the basics, if you will.
That's one way to look at it, but as far as the thing that we thought people would know the most about is themselves, and the thing that is, it's easy to translate how important that is to understand the process of going through and looking at hard decisions. We appreciate that our students know the easy ones. So how do you look at a situation or a circumstance that nobody's ever talked to you about before, and it might be it's hard to see what a clear answer is, and we're looking at how can we find a process that allows the students to think through those tough choices that nobody's ever prepared them for, and as more and more responsibility gets pushed further and further down the chain of command, and technology has given us greater reach. I think it's important to prepare our students for things that nobody's ever talked about and we couldn't even envision. So we focus again on what is a process that you can use to think through different circumstances, not necessarily knowing what you might see in the future.
So what does that look like? Like, what do y'all teach in the course?
Well, what we look at is a moral decision roadmap. As far as first, we take a look at what constraints we have as far as what we would how our actions impact others, and we try to get into that as far as a little bit on the moral ethical philosophy of it. So that's sort of the first thing we look at. And then we take a look at how to evaluate the utility of each decision. So what is as some people would say, the greatest amount of good that could come from each decision that you could make. We also look at what we call special obligation, as far as what is expected of us from our positions and as service members, and how does that change our responsibilities.
And you have discussions about that stuff. The students have discussions about that stuff.
The important thing in all of our courses is the weekly discussions, because one of our strengths is, again, bringing together those students that have had similar challenges, have had similar experiences, and what they bring is relevant. So it's not like you're taking a class where you're trying to explain what you do on a daily basis and why it's important to somebody who's never been in the military, because all the other students in the discussion are active duty as well. They're all at least members of the Navy, the Marine Corps, or the Coast Guard. So when you have a conversation about, hey, this is why this is tough, this is why I'm not sure I should do this or that, given the circumstance that we'll go over for the week, the inputs and the experiences that are shared are so much more important, because they're from people that have they've sort of lived the life and walked the walk and can understand sort of the nuances of the decisions in a way that you might not have in a different course.
So how has that looked like when you've got Marines and sailors who have a very different leadership style? How do those discussions end up looking?
While they may have different leadership styles, I think it boils down to they all have the same goals. They all want to take care of their people. They all want to accomplish the mission. They all want to make sure that their actions reflect well on their services. So that having that bedrock of commonality, I think, makes it a lot easier for people to relate. Where the different experiences come in, I think, is something it's sort of helpful as far as a different perspective and different approaches. And I think the students are honest enough to say, hey, here's are some of the things that I've seen in my experience that is helpful in this. Here's a tool that I've picked up in my service that I think is useful in this situation, and share sort of the best that they've seen across the services. Not any service does everything perfect, and I think that by being honest as far as, hey, here's some good ideas that we can steal or borrow from other services, and look at different approaches, I think that's another helpful thing where those students come together. So there's more in common than you might think, and the differences, I think, are more helpful as the students see different approaches, different styles, different things that they can use. The more tools you have for different circumstances, the better off you're going to be.
So it's almost like education is learning from a whole bunch of other people's experiences instead of just one.
Exactly. So if you have 20 students, even though they may only have 4 or 5 years, if you take 4 or 5 years times 20, that's a huge experience. So not only do you have your instructor, your professor, but any good teacher leverages the knowledge in the classroom as well, and being able to have so much naval knowledge, as we'll refer to all three services, I think it is a huge advantage. So, when I've taught the course, I've learned different approaches and things. You're always learning, and so from that perspective, it's really a lot of fun to teach, because everybody has something to contribute in the class, and that's part of our foundation for all of our courses, is to make sure that we have students that have things to contribute to the conversation. They have experiences. They've been out in the fleet. They've been in some challenges or seen things that are relevant that they really want to bring into class.
So then, they bring all this stuff into the classroom. They have these discussions in the classroom, and then they go back to the fleet, right? They go back to their ships or out to the field or whatever it is that they're doing. How does this course translate into their day-to-day job?
Again, when we talk about sharing those experiences and different approaches and providing those different tools, that's an important part of the more diversity of perspective as far as seeing the problem from different sides, whether it's the Marine Corps side, the Coast Guard side, or the Navy side, or different ranks, or from different rates or MOSs. The goods that can be shared across those experiences. And then the other thing is the ability to sort of have a process. This is something I wasn't trained for. This is something that nobody's ever discussed, but now I have a process that I can go to make sure that I get to the best decision possible. The thing that really makes me happy is when somebody says, hey, this is great, I want to share this with my squad or my division, and they say, I see the utility in this, and I want to make sure that I share it with others because I think this is helpful.
Have you had an experience where a student comes back and says, hey, because of the stuff that we learned here, I went and applied it, and this is the result I got?
I've not had that necessarily direct experience. I've had several students that have said, hey, this is something where I know I'm going to make better decisions, and I want to make sure that I share this with others. And so I've seen that. The thing that I've been impressed about, many things, but one of the things that I think was a little surprised, but is how honest the students are about, hey, here's some place where I may have made a mistake, and if I'd looked at this differently with what I've learned, I would have made a better choice. And I have to respect the students who are honest and say, hey, this might be a little embarrassing, but I think it's important because I want other students to learn from it and say, here's something where I think I could have done better. Here's where I can look back and say, if I had this tool or this approach, I would have had a better outcome, and I want to make sure that I share that. And I've been impressed with that.
Well, that's awesome. So to wrap it all up, NAV 101, Naval Ethics and Leadership, is the introductory course, which is basically starting with the individual, because they know their own leadership. They know what they've done, what they've been through. And so it's learning from each other how to get new insights and develop. And the kinds of things that you go over are those different philosophies on leadership, and really it's the weekly discussions where the biggest bang for the buck is, if you will, right?
Correct.
And then from there, they can take it out to the fleet and apply these things basically instantly, because now they have new insights, new perspectives for making better leadership decisions going forward.
That's a very good summary, yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I hope that we get to have you back on and talk about the other courses in the Naval Studies Certificate Program.
I look forward to it.